For our first discussion of the day, we have a power-packed panel of change makers and leaders. As the moderator for this session, we have Mr. Mohit Nirula, Chief Operating Officer, the Oberoi Group. Mr. Nirula began his career with the Oberoi Group in 1986, managing hotels across brands and geographies. His second innings saw him at Columbia Pacific Communities, making his second organization in a distinguished 30-year career. Joining him on stage are Mr. Anil Chadha, Managing Director, ITC Hotels, Mr. Anuraag Bhatnagar, Chief Executive Officer, the Leela Palace Hotels and Resorts, Dr. Sanjay Sethi, Managing Director and CEO, Chalet Hotels, and Mr. Menon, President, Asia Pacific, excluding China, Marriott International.
Your face to the seat that you're sitting on. Oh, that's what we've been asked to do. Switch the picture. The light's in my face, but do we have anyone beyond the first 5 rows?
In Raj's language, we are going to play cricket here, and I said we've only got silly point and short leg. There's nobody at long on. But it seems it's filling up, so it's all right. But good morning, everybody, ladies and gentlemen. It is an absolute privilege to present to you a panel that has been put together by HICSA and Manav. And I mean, when in a conference full of hoteliers, hotel GMs, stakeholders in the hospitality business, when you have a panel like this, it can only be described in 3 words. And those 3 words are, needs no introduction. So with that said, I'm going to kick this off very quickly on the basis that actually I went and checked how many people does a human being meet in one's lifetime? And the answer was 80,000. You can check this on ChatGPT or on Perplexity, whatever you use. And these 4 gentlemen met 80,000 people in their life before they became banquet manager. So you can imagine the wealth that sits here, and I can bet you that the number of people sitting in the audience who've either not worked, interacted, or spent time being mentored by them would be an absolute minority. The other reason is because all of us were nominated to call some of you to be present so that it wasn't an empty hall. But with that said, I shall now move first to Raj. And I should also say that I have spent 10-minute calls with 2 people, a WhatsApp interaction with 1, and 1 I didn't even speak to in preparing for this one. But we'll start with Raj, and Raj had a very interesting analogy to tell me about pilots and ATCs, about a career that this hotel has played a big role in. But over to Raj, please talk to them.
Sure. Thank you, Mohit, and good morning, everybody. Great to be with you. The question really is from a general manager to CEO. Now, for me personally, growing up, the aspiration was to be a fighter pilot. So, unfortunately, because of my eyes, I could never get there. And as I've worked my way through life, all my analogies are generally still an obsession with the plane. So, when I transitioned from being a GM to an area vice president, it took me about 6 to 8 months to try and figure out what was different. What was I doing that would have to be different in doing my job to be very successful as an area vice president or an above property leader. And sitting in a plane, it dawned on me that I had gone from being a captain of a 747, which was really this hotel that I opened many moons ago, where you had all the controls in your hand. You knew exactly what you were doing. Your team was around you. Good or bad, you know, it all, you saw the results of your work, to being almost like an air traffic controller, where there were lots of planes flying around. My job was to make sure that there were the right pilots in the flight deck. They were following the right instructions. They were landing and taking off safely. And the traffic was growing every single year, right? So when you think about today as president, what I do, it really is about driving performance, driving growth, and talent. And it is like being an ATC controller, more so than being captain of a 747.
Now move to somebody, and all of us have been general managers, or many of us have been general managers. And if there is one role that you can ask, where is this position person going to be standing? The answer is normally the same for all hotels, and that's the doorman. The doorman is at the door of the hotel. In massive hotels, there'll be 2 doormen. But in the last assignment that this person did, there were 4 doors into the hotel, 4 separate entrances. So, Anil, at the Chola, what is it that you learned as GM that stood you in good stead as you took on your new role at corporate?
Morning, Mohit. Thank you. Morning, everybody. So first of all, the name is not Chola. It is ITC Grand Chola.
Oh, very grand Chola. Sorry, I apologize.
So, let's get the branding right. That's very important. But yeah, so when I moved into that role from being a GM of ITC Moria, instead of managing one hotel, you suddenly started managing 4 or 5 hotels. And I think I personally, as a GM, was definitely a big control freak. So you needed to know everything from a doorman to chairman as to what's happening in everybody's lives. But when you start managing bigger positions, larger inventories, I think the biggest learning was move from being a control freak to empowerment, you know. And that learning continued. You know, when you move to the corporate office role, I think the Chennai posting certainly helped because, you know, you're managing 10 or 11 hotels, you know, maybe about 2,000 people. But now when you run a large inventory, 140 hotels, that comes into play. I think our job is very similar to what Raj mentioned. You know, you're playing the role of a coach, and I think it's more support role and empowerment and making sure that you clear all the roadblocks. Something that we used to complain when we were at the shop floor that this HQ is very slow. That cannot happen now. So, you know, you need to make sure that you, you know, help people grow and achieve what they want to.
Thanks. We now move to Dr. Sanjay Sethi, and he's somebody who's played all roles, an operator, an owner, and now currently in his role, not only owns assets, but also has many under direct operation. And the question that I had for you was with regards to, in your own journey for this, you mentioned to me that there is a point of GOP where a general manager's objectives kind of come to a halt, but really the CEOs start after that. So if you could just talk to the group about that. And there are many aspiring GMs who want to cross that line now.
Look, I think that's true largely. Some GMs do get to go beyond that, but I think the GOP line has become so sacrosanct on the operating side, and it needs to expand. Look, there's a lot more life post the GOP line. In fact, GOP as a word doesn't exist in the accounting parlance except in hotels. So the Uniform System of Accounting probably is the only one that actually has GOP as a line. So what happens is that we're in a business which is capital intensive, it's people intensive, and it's extremely competitive. With all of that in mind, if we can have everyone in the chain, at least to maybe the HOD level of the hotels, aware of what happens beyond the GOP, it just helps the purpose, the end goal of the business. It is something that I learned very early in life. When I became a general manager in 1995, what hit me was that I was left on my own, not only to look after a hotel because it was beyond the boondocks, and therefore no one from corporate office really wanted to pay attention to it, but they also sent me a note saying, listen, go ahead and build capacity into that hotel. I said, how do I build capacities? Design something, get someone to construct it and start operating it. I didn't know the size of a brick that time was 9 inches by 4.5 inches. And I was asked to make BOQs. So I think you learn on the job, and very often if you're thrust responsibilities in your earlier part of your jobs, you'll get to learn a lot more. Yeah, so that's my answer for this. But I would urge all general managers and actually HODs to spend some time understanding the business, not only understanding, actually following through on the business till the at least profit before tax as a number that you should look at.
Thank you. And the fourth person that I turn to is a person that I went to college and hostel together. In fact, one of the pictures that we have of Anuraag and me is in a single piece of garment. And those of us who've been to college and in hostel would know what that garment would be. It's from a time when black and white photographs were there, and if you were to put it on an iPad and zoom in and look at the branding involved, it would have told us the kind of people that we would be serving all our lives, and it said VIP. But when I didn't actually bother speaking to Anuraag. I said, but in our conversations, we've kind of spoken about this. So, Anuraag, you want to tell them why you use the word organic for your growth?
Now, before I get there, let me remind you, Mohit was much better looking then. Thank you all.
Listen, we've all grown. He's grown in position, I've grown in size, but that doesn't mean anything.
So, organic, because every stage of life and in career, I kind of spent a couple of years at the minimum before I moved on to the next. And if I may just take a cue from basis of what Raj and Dr. Sethi said, the most important role for any hotelier and anyone who's in this business industry is that the role of a general manager. The impact that you have on the business, the influence that you have on your bottom line, the leadership traits that you acquire and learn, they stay with you for life. And I think in my career, I started off as a management trainee, assistant manager, banquet manager, F&E manager, EM, GM, and then GM of a larger hotel, and then so on and so forth, multi-property area, and so on and so forth. Every life stage brings you skills. It also very important that how open you are and how learning agile you are. There was this conversation about stopping at GOP. I think today's day and age, taking a step back and reflecting on the entire business, how it creates value for all stakeholders, from GOP margins to IRR, looking at from EBITDA to profit after tax, and what it means from your lens as a general manager. If you start reviewing and evaluating that business, and this is something that came to me organically as well, because of the fact that I worked in so many different, and you always learn from the ownership mindset. And off late, the organization that I represent and I work for, you also understand that you represent a fund, and there is a certain expectation in terms of understanding the business from that lens. What value creation is happening. So that learnings can only come when you are a very, not just an agile, but a learning inclined general manager, and you use that tenure, because this will never come back again. What sets you up is what you have done in the last 10 years. So in my case, from a general manager to a multi-property general manager was organic, and then Raj would remember, to an area role, heading luxury for Marriott hotels in India, and then moving on to take over the COO position in Leela 2.0, and then moving on as a CEO. Everything came, but with every life stage, there were learnings, but the biggest learnings come in when you're a general manager.
What we will have is question answer time after this conversation comes to an end. And I know there are many in the room who are general managers whose appraisal is yet to happen for this year, whose bosses are here. So please prepare your questions and ask your questions, because what you invest in questions today will answer in increments in another couple of months. So please keep that in mind. You see, when I was prepared, thinking of the next question to ask Raj after his ATC analogy, I kind of checked how many hotels was he, how many aircrafts was he managing in the air at this point in time, and how many were in the pipeline ready to take off. So again, I went to Perplexity and said, how many hotels does Rajeev Menon have in his portfolio? So Perplexity, which is a very nice, and I don't take any commissions, but said to me, Rajeev Menon handles a portfolio of 640 hotels at this point in time. To check the accurate number, reload the question, because the answer changes, you see? So it's a really, so 640, and the last I checked about 400 odd in the pipeline. But what I have to tell you is I've once been to an ATC, and this is in the days when there were Whitney racks and everything else, and every Whitney thing had an aircraft. And then while he was explaining all this to him, he did this, and 3 of them fell down. And he picked them up, and these are stacks, which is above which is above which. And then these 3 which had fallen down, he stuck them back in, and I was just hoping he'd stuck them in the right sequence because they're up there. So I kind of asked Raj that, listen, 640 in the air, 400 ready to take off. When does he have fun? I mean, this is a really tough job. So what do you do for fun?
So the fun part, I talked about the 3 things that I do today, which is really performance, growth, and talent. And to me, the fun part is seeing incredible careers grow across the industry. For years, for me, coming back to India 24 years ago, opening this hotel, starting up Marriott as an AVP when we had 6 hotels here, the one thing we focused on that point in time, because we were very small. We had 6 hotels in comparison to the ITCs or Taj or Oberois of the world. So we said, what is going to be our USP, right? And we figured out that, look at internationals or domestic, nobody was really building global careers. There was a glass ceiling. And that became our mantra, that we hired incredible talent, gave them what Marriott calls as balanced scorecard as leaders, and we let them flourish. And today, we have incredible global leaders that have grown from India all around the world. And that created this incredible pipeline of talent that would come in and basically join Marriott just because they saw their destiny running a hotel in Washington or somewhere in Europe. So to me, that's the part that gives me most pleasure. Of course, winning, driving incredible performance, growing at an incredible pace, given the competitive nature of who we are. All of us here, and I'm sure general managers as well, I've always used the word called frenemies. We are mostly friends in the evening, but enemies during the day, right? Because we fight hard for driving performance. Now, ultimately, as a general manager, to me, there are 3 things that are critically important. The first part is about the ability to take risk as an entrepreneur. If you go back and look at any entrepreneur that has made big, they have always taken incredible risks. And particularly when you're young, that ability to take risk is really what sets you up for the future. Second, inquisitive mindset, learning that is lifelong. If you are about focusing on asking lots of questions, listening more than talking, you generally end up in a winning place. And ability, every time you transition to a new role, to say, where are my strengths and where are my weaknesses, and learn every aspect of the business, as some of us said before, becomes critical from a long-term success point of view. And finally, the third thing, as a leader, full stop, we are only as good as our teams. And my firm belief as a young leader, as a leader today, managing a workforce of some 105,000 people around Asia Pacific, it is really around getting the right talent in the right place. So that's what fun looks like.
What looks like fun to Raj, and he says it gives him a lot of pleasure, actually gives players like us a lot of pain, because all these wonderful people that he finds, he tends to find from our company. So, but that's all right. Frenemies is what it is. We'll be friends. We'll never be enemies, but just take a little less fun and give us a little less pain, please. Coming back to Dr. Sethi, and this question is because of the fact that they have a very varied portfolio and they're adding more assets. And they are not, much as Raj would like to hope, operator loyal. So I did want to ask you, and if you could share with general managers and the people and owners over here, what is it that you think? You will notice that I'm not asking the same question to all people. It's because I suffer when I'm sitting on panels when the same question comes to me fourth and everybody's already given the answer. So I've tried to keep the questions different. So what factors do you keep in mind while deciding the operator for your asset?
So, Mohit, firstly, we are very operator loyal. We are multi-operator loyal. Let me put it like that.
I remember to tell my wife that.
Okay, yeah, so I think we decide on the operator based on the location that we're building in, the sort of vision that we have for that asset in terms of the positioning. And finally, what is the target audience that we're trying to address? And based on the target audience, we sort of pick a few operators, and then we start having conversation, and one by one, by elimination, we come to the one that we want to run with. We'd love to do all hotels with Raj or anyone else, but in Delhi, we hit a roadblock when we were deciding on the operator for the Taj Delhi, because Marriott had 3 hotels there, and they're building 2 more. I mean, not them, but the owners are building 2 more. And we thought that there is going to be some amount of dilution of the loyalty program in that one micro market. And therefore, we went with 2, 3 other options and decided on one of them. We were also very clear we're going to do this on a franchise. And then Oberoi will not do a franchise, so we couldn't work with Oberoi at that point of time, hopefully in some time in future. But we shortlisted this down to Taj, the Hilton. Hilton has a Conrad there, and IHG, but then we went with Taj as a franchise. Look, that hotel, for example, I want to give this as a reference point. When we won the bid for getting that hotel, almost everyone at CO or CO -1 level globally reached out to us. That hotel is so beautifully located outside T3 because when you put your logo up on that, you're literally at the gateway of India and the logo's staring in the face. I think this is an indication of how we decide on the operators. We've been blessed that we worked with Marriott for a very long time. It was Starwood and Marriott, the 2 fiercest competitors early on. Then X came, and our likes came in one basket. We did expand the portfolio. One was through an acquisition, the Accor one, which is a already operating hotel. And then there onwards, we are working with Hyatt, we are working with Taj, and we are having conversations with other operators. But the goal is, what's the best fit for that location and target audience?
Makes a lot of logical sense, so don't feel cheated, Raj, it's all right.
I'm used to being
Two-timed.
Loved in many ways.
Loved in many ways.
You know, Dimitri sitting here is a dear friend, and I'm missing you up here, Dimitri, by the way. And, you know, he talks about his love for shoes.
Okay.
And he's got 400 of them. 400 or have I lost count?
Where do you stay?
He's Greek.
All right. Okay. I now move to Anil, and I have, I mean, actually, if you were to think of it, there are three people on this stage who've been touched by ITC at some stage. One, two, and here is three. There are some who've been touched by PUSA at some stage. So there is a lot in common on the stage and in the room. But every time Anil and I meet, we tend to speak in Punjabi. And no, I'm not going there, so don't worry. He held on to his heart. And every time he tells me about the number of balls he's juggling as CEO, because when you're general manager, your single-minded focus is on your hotel, on your people. But rarely, suddenly, the number of stakeholders change. And he tells me about the number of balls he's got up in the air and how he's juggling them. Which out of these requires the most focus, and which out of these do you enjoy the most? So if you could just talk us through what is day in the life of Anil Chadha, which requires you to kind of say, guys, I need to focus, this is important, and which is just fun to do?
Well, I guess if you ask about focus is on every ball, if you ask me, because I think the biggest, the most sleepless time I have is thinking about only one word, and could be cliched, but it's growth. Growth of your existing assets, growth of the asset right path, and growth of our people, which will come in through these two. So that's the thing. But in terms of when you say focus, at this point in time, the focus definitely is to grow the new brands that we've launched. That's been a very exciting moment. Because we are an organization which is built on legacy. There is some fabulous work which has been done over the years. We are a late entrant. We did not start our journey until about 1975. But over the years, built some great assets, built the brand ITC Hotels, built Fortune. Welcome Hotel has now finally taken off really well. We launched 2 new brands, Mementos in the luxury space and Story in the premium space. That's been a great achievement. Some of my ex-colleagues who are sitting here, part of the development team then, they saw the need. We went in for it. The first hotel opened in Udaipur. That gives you a lot of joy and fun. We are definitely known for our food and beverage strengths. And you took over Bukharas and Dampuks, and you were part of the journey. But creating something new always excites. We opened a new brand called Avartan, which has become a pride of India. So that's what we love doing, and we continue to grow. But again, you go back that for the growth of your people, all these things have to grow simultaneously, and that's most important. And as Raj mentioned, it gives you great joy when you see. My journey has also been very similar to what Anuraag is. From a management trainee to an MD today, it's been a long journey across all levels. So when you see youngsters today taking over as young general managers, and I've always said this crop is different. They are much smarter than probably when I was as a GM. They are much more exposed. They are more knowledgeable. They are more innovative. So it's good to see them, grow into these shoes. And what we can do for them today is to get them ready for tomorrow.
Well, thank you for that answer. I now move to Anuraag. And in all our careers, we go through tough times and good times and everything. And I remember 2008, I was in Bombay when the terror attacks took place. And then, because the hotel got shot up pretty badly and had to be shut down and restarted, I moved to Egypt. And for 2 years, I lived there happily with President Hosni Mubarak, and then the Arab Spring took place. So when things like that happen in your life, you kind of say, this too will pass, and that kind of helps you get through some of the more difficult times. But I know Anuraag to be a fairly spiritual person in life. Unfortunately, his conduct does not always match that spirituality, but actually he's spiritual.
Guy's got a broken foot, man.
Actually, a lot of you have been asking what happened to the IPO, why did it get deferred? So he did about 70 meetings, and every time he put his foot in his mouth, they had to defer the
Thank you, Mohit.
IPO. No, I thought I'll answer that question in case. So, having said that, Anuraag, please can you talk to them about this hidden talent of yours, very well hidden, called spirituality?
Right. I thank you, Mohit, for this fantastic prelude. So I think, firstly, I'll come to you, Mohit, in a while. But before I get there,
He'll spend the rest of the answer thinking of
I
a
think
comeback.
let me see how many minutes I can take right now. Maybe 4 or 5 minutes. So I'll keep a minute for you. So I think spirituality is not something, and I think he's putting it out there as a very big, I don't know, qualification. Is something that we are. Basically, without sounding preachy, spiritual beings having a physical experience. But I do not know how many of you watch or have watched this Game of Thrones. There are two specific statements they make, Valhar Mugulis and Valhar Dusiris. I don't know if anybody can relate to them. First statement means all men shall die, right? And the second statement is all men shall serve. This is gender neutral when we can translate it. I think to me, we all hear this like cliched, everything will pass, this too shall pass. But if you correlate this to our business, where we are impacting so many lives, and like Mohit mentioned earlier, I'm hoping the data point is right and not a chat GPT product. 80,000 odd people that we impact in life, and our ability to get meaning out of those interactions and leave some impression on those people and learn from them and carry a little bit of that, that's what makes our business so beautiful. So it's not about giving up everything, and then we still are very, very focused on our RGI index. We heard somebody talk about an RGI index of 135 yesterday, and I was immediately checked, ours is 138, so maybe we need to get our numbers in order. We are very, very focused on singular focus on luxury, which means luxury in many sense is pluralistic because it's being the highest and best versions all the time at every interaction that you do. But I think it's also doing it with the mindset of responsible attachment and not detachment in that sense. That you can always aspire to be the best, create the best experiences, come up with the product, services, and offering. And also, I also think this spirituality is something everybody is with, so I won't try to be preachy about it, but it's like it also gives you a sense of a leadership where you see just beyond the immediate interaction of a reaction to a better response. So there is no ritual that I follow, Mohit, and I still have obviously enjoying my single malt and everything else that comes with life, but I think it's a sense that we perspective that you need to acquire. I'll spare you because of this new age learning. I'll spare you the last 1 minute. Yeah.
You're very kind, Anuraag. I mean, what would I do without you in life? Raj spoke about three things. He spoke about an entrepreneurial spirit that you need to have as a general manager, about the need to always keep learning, and the need to build a team around you. And these are the three things that you did as a GM and you have to do today as well. But in all your dealings in a day, are there things that you have to do different now, which you didn't have to do as a general manager, which sometimes makes you wonder whether those were the better days or these are the better days?
So I can tell you for sure, those were the better days, right?
So all of you aspiring to become Raj, stay where you are. You're in the good days.
You know, the general manager position, as some of us have said up here, is still the best job in the business. There is no denying it. What is different today, when you think about, at least from my perspective, you know, I talked about those three things earlier: performance, growth, and talent. That entrepreneurial spirit that I talked about, I can have that today, but often I cannot do much without the general managers taking action on the ground, right? So that's the reason I come back to this piece about ATC, that you almost have to become an influencer, right? Our job today as leaders above property, CEOs, presidents, is to create a strategy with our leadership teams. The reality is, folks, execution eats strategy for breakfast, right? So you can create the best strategy in any corporate office. But unless you can get your teams to buy into that strategy and execute that strategy beautifully, you will never win. So what I do different today is really spending a lot of time in this world of communication, influencing, spending time engaging with our leaders to understand from what strategy that we have developed, what's working well versus what's really not working well, right? Again, back to the point of, for any leader, the ability to listen is often more important than many other leadership qualities, because you as general managers know most of the answers. And as general managers, please remember, it's your associates that have most of the answers. So for all the years that I was general manager, once a month, I randomly picked 10 associates, not managers, 10 associates from different departments, and took them to lunch just to understand how things were going, right? Similarly today, every so often when I'm in different markets around Asia, I'll get hold of general managers and we'll have a meal together just to understand what's working well, what's not working well. Because you can create the best strategy in the world, but if you can't execute against it, then it's worth nothing. So that's what I do different today.
I hope you're kind of finding these insights of what these gentlemen do interesting and relevant. And as general managers, also looking at your quiver full of arrows that you will need in life to fight your battles, as to which of the arrows that are missing and what you need to do to fill your quiver so they are battle ready when the time comes. In my conversation that I had with Dr. Sethi, one of the things that we spoke about is how he divides, or what aspects of work does he allocate what percentage of his time to today. And so I'm going to ask you, if you don't mind, please repeat it for everybody over here so that they understand how a day gets spent, and then you can do your own inventory to say how confident you are of those skill sets at this point in time, and therefore what is it that you need to do to up your own skill level over there. Over to you.
Sure. Mohit, before I answer that, I echo what Raj said. The general manager's job is probably the best job that's available in our industry. And I've actually said that at the Marriott GM's meet a year back. They asked me, what do you want your swan song to be? I said, I don't have a swan song to roll out, but I would like to come back after I retire from this job to be a general manager of hotel for at least 1 more year. So that's how much I think that's good. In terms of allocation, look, from a general manager to an entrepreneur in 2006, there was an upskilling that had to happen for me to get there. And because it was a startup, you learned on the job. But today, as I run a slightly larger company, roughly around $2 billion plus, the time has to be reallocated very differently. Clearly, growth is where I allocate most of the time, which is basically either acquiring hotels or acquiring land and then building hotels. So mix of both. Then comes in this new element of management of the board, because you're a listed board, so independent directors and the shareholders. Today we have about 80,000 odd shareholders, and we need to manage them in all respects. So a lot of time goes to this management of compliances, board, and investor relations. But when I got into this job, I think I spent a lot of time in getting one thing right, which was the culture. So in the initial days at Chalet, I focused for almost about 6 to 8 months. Almost 50% of the time went into getting the right team and getting the culture right. And I think that's helped me very well going forward. So if you were to ask me how do I allocate the time, largest on the growth side, next on the board and investor relations, and finally on the talent that we have over here. That's how I split my time.
When I came back into the Oberoi group, and when now somebody asks me how long have you been back, I tend to now answer 6 quarters because the one thing that has changed over these 7 years that I was away, or the 6 years that I was away, there wasn't this kind of focus that I see now on financial performance. And I'll just take 1 minute of non-panelist time, but Mohit Gyan time, is this thing about STR scores and RGI indexes. It's probably the biggest con job that exists in our business, right? Because I can promise you, if I were to, and the happiest people clapping and the honest people clapping are the general managers. The fact of the matter is, whether you're RGI 1, RGI 135, is about a function of what competition set you select. And you can be 180% if you wanted to. So you're right when somebody says 135 or you say 138. All I can say is the 138 selected better than the 135, right? So please let's focus on the things that I'm hearing over here, on talent, on development of people, on focus. We haven't spoken so much about guests, and that is what worries me about how when 5 sets of hoteliers sit down and talk about so many things in life, and the word guest doesn't get an entry, right? And that's what has changed when I look back over the 7 years that it's come. We talk RGI, we talk talent, we talk this and that, and growth and everything else, but guest doesn't get a mention. So I come back, slightly switching gears to my dear friend Anil. And the question that I had in mind was, what does your wife or your family hate most about your job? And then I thought, that's a simple answer. I know what the answer to that is, so I'm not going to ask the question. So I thought I'll ask you, what does your wife love most about the job that you do?
To be honest, I'm not brave enough to ask her that question because I know the answers on both sides, love and hate. But I think she's been very understanding. And these kids these days talk about giving each other space. So we've mastered that art for the last 30 years. Job also survived, marriage also survived. It's been a good work-life balance.
What she loves about the job is that Anil has to travel a lot. Okay, we now go to young Mr. Bhatnagar. And again, the general managers will resonate with this. There was a time in our lives as general managers when a particular time of the day when the phone used to ring, you'd say, God, I wonder what went wrong, right? But when you move off hotel and into corporate, then the phones ring for different reasons at different times. So I just wanted to ask Anuraag, because he's been through this journey, as to now when the phone rings, what is the thing that worries you when the phone starts to ring at an odd time during the day?
Well, the phone rang a lot more when I was a general manager. First, let me put it out there. When the phone rings, nothing really worries, but obviously, if somebody's reaching you, especially if it's an odd hour. And again, my definition of odd hour would be very different from Mohit's definition of odd hour. Because I guess because he's showing his pusa love for me all this while, I thought it's time that I kind of returned the favor, right? My odd hours are not necessarily 6:30 in the morning or 11:30 at night, just to put a point. So I think when the phone rings today, it's obviously that someone needs to speak something, needs supposedly your words of wisdom, a steady voice at the end of the other line, and hopefully a solution. And I think somebody alluded to this. Just listening intently in itself usually allows the other person to come up with a resolution, which they probably would have thought of to begin with. And I think you just end up being an enabler or a good listener at the end of the line. So that's what it does to me. Hopefully, the way we try to run our business and our services, there are not, fingers crossed, too many late night, odd hours, early morning calls as such. It's usually more of a WhatsApp, which can set your tone of the day, certain emails or WhatsApp that you receive in your inbox, which you get tempted to respond to, and you have to fight that urge, perhaps. And this double blue tick thing, that you have read that WhatsApp message, and the other person knows that the message has been read and is waiting for a resolution or a response or a guidance. Now that's the delta that you need to navigate for a few minutes.
Fair enough. This late night calls reminds me of my time in Egypt. And Egyptian people are very polite. They are extremely deferential. They will respect position and authority. And then when the phone rings at 1:30 a.m. and you are groggy and you pick it up and you know it can't be good news, and it starts by, "Really, sir, I'm so sorry to be disturbing you this late at night." You say, okay, yes, please go ahead. No, but it really pains me that I've called you at this point in time in the night to be able to. So I say, I understand, but what is the... No, you have to forgive me because tomorrow I don't want God to be angry with me for having disturbed you at this time of night. And you say, "Please tell me, is the guy dead or alive?" And he says, no, I just wanted to say there is a room which is double locked and can we have your master key? So these calls are no longer happening, thankfully. But we are now 11 minutes away from saying bye-bye. So if there are any questions in the audience, we'll take those. And if there aren't, we'll gift Mr. Tadani and his wonderful crew 10 minutes of time from our side and make our way off the stage. So are there any questions?
Mohit, there are a few on the screen.
Oh, there are.
And before you go there, to your question about guests, I talked about balanced scorecard, right? The one thing I will say is often as general managers, yes, profit is important, but please keep in mind, we are all the custodians of our brands. We deliver experiences. And to me, all my life, if you don't balance incredible talent, incredible guest experience that truly is delivered through your brand promise, you will never create the reputation that brings the profit. That's the reason we spend so much time focused on the balanced scorecard.
Great. The questions I have in front of me, and it's probably better like this. If you could ask just one, in fact, I'm going to ask 4 questions, each one. Changes that you see in today's general manager compared to 20 years ago. And Raj, we'll start with you today.
I think 20 years back, general manager...
Sorry, go ahead. No, it's okay. You've started.
I thought 20 years back, general managers were more inclined towards being innkeepers. They were the custodians of the guest experience. They were extremely present and available to the guests. There were probably not so many expectations in terms of meetings and different KPIs. So the focus was a lot more inclined towards guest experiences, food and beverage excellence, the warmth and graciousness of service. Of late today, whilst there are, I can tell you, people and most people have retained that innkeeper's heart, today expectations have changed. You do have a balanced scorecard approach where the focus on guests is as it should be, but it's not all about guests. And I think to what Raj alluded to, we need to carve out enough time and mind space to ensure that whilst you got other KPIs working, you got more tools, more resources, AI, Chat, GPT, and very, very switched on stakeholders and Gen Zs working for you, you also need to remember what the core is.
I'm not going to ask this question of Dr. Sethi because he's been asked that before. So I'll go to Anil with this. One word you would hope is associated with your legacy when your journey is complete. And may that not happen for some time, but what would you?
He just became CEO, man.
No, but the question's there. What do I do?
Thank you for clarifying that. But there's an old saying in Hindi that when you finish your journey as a hotelier, लोग तुम्हें तुम्हारे नाम से नहीं तुम्हारे काम से याद रखें, and that's what I would love to be remembered as.
And there is an old saying which says, "मैं तो touch ही हो गया." So this then comes to you, Raj. You all manage extensive portfolios of hotels and general manager. What type of general manager do you prefer in terms of skills and personality?
Say that again, gentlemen.
What type of general manager do you prefer in terms of skills and personality?
I said this before, somebody who is truly entrepreneurial, takes the risks, but as a leader, it's not all about them. It's about having an incredible team, somebody who's able to build great team around them. That's the individual that excites me the most.
Great. And, they changed the question I had for Dr. Sethi. Yeah. And this, I will twist it a bit. It's on the top, but I'm going to twist it and I say, if you could ask just one question to an operator in an interview, what would that question be?
Where do I sign? They're not going to let go of anything in the contract.
I shall come and see you on the side. Ladies and gentlemen, we have 6 minutes, but I think we're going to give this back to Manav. I'd really like all of you, if there are 4 role models that you want in life to build your careers about, these are there. And please may I ask you to put your hands together to give a thunderous round of applause to these wonderful people. Thank you so much.